Namaste, dear Sazno, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to another episode of our podcast. My name is Bharat, and with me, like always, is my highly skilled, trained professional co-host, Mr. Parth, and we're really glad to have someone really special all the way from New York. We've got a really well-renowned singer-songwriter, Mr. Rory lasnow, who's joined us. And we're really elated to be doing this episode with him. We're going to be talking about his processes, his influences, uh, about his discography, the songs that he's put out, his gigging life, the Songwriter Showcase, a segment that he's been doing since almost a year, if I'm not wrong, and a bunch of other stuff pertaining to his life and his music. So, hey, Rory, how's it going? Thank you so much for joining, man. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Hey, pleasure talking to you too. Thank you guys for having me.
Pleasure's all ours, man. Pleasure's all ours. So, how's it going, man? How's everything? I mean, let's we were talking about it like the situation is much better in New York right now. So what is like life? I mean, what really fascinates me about the whole lockdown aspect of it is that people have adapted so quickly, right? You know, like we are having this podcast, whereas which wouldn't have been something that would have been so acceptable, probably a year prior. I mean, I'm sure it was happening in some capacity, but I think the frequency just sort of increased, right? And the fact that
Yeah.
what we sort of even noticed about like your whole career is that you've been a lot into gigging, right? I mean, uh, that's a major aspect of any performing artist. You also sort of adapted to like the songwriter showcase, which is something you want to touch down upon later in the podcast. So tell me, man, what is gigging really exactly mean to you? How much of a component it is to your musical career? And like always there's that common thing, like there's studio time and then there's tour time, right? Like you're on the road. How much?
Yeah.
How do you sort of like, if it's like a pie chart of sorts in your musical career? How do you sort of like look at things in perspective? What is it like to you?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. As you said, things have definitely, there's been a lot of adjustment that's been required with COVID, unfortunately. But
Right.
we have definitely been, yourself, you guys, and me as well. We've both been adjusting to that, as evidenced by, this podcast and the showcase for me.
Right.
Um, Yeah, I mean, I love all of that stuff. I love the gigging. I love the studio time. I think for me,
Right.
it's like probably 75% in a pie chart, the gigging that I love because it's connecting with people that really drives me to do music more than anything. It's a really good feeling to get something right in the studio as well, and really get that perfect sound you're looking for. But there's nothing like shaking someone's hand, looking them in the eye, and saying like, "Hey, thank you for coming to my show," and all that.
That's a wonderful way of looking at things. So, Roy, what I want to know is like I would want to like sort of even get to like the micro aspect of like gigging, because we've also gigged in Pune and we sort of understand, but I'm sure it's a completely different vibe there, because I think there's a more sort of streamlined culture to gigging, where I feel that you guys are. I think gigging is tours out here could also vary in terms of scalability, depending on how you're situated in the market and like the whole ecosystem.
Mhm.
What I want to basically ask you is how much of the songwriting process is cultivated or culminated during the gigging? Because I'm sure like gigging gets a little exhausting also at times, right? How do you sort of keep
Yeah.
yourself intact? How do you keep yourself intact and objective with that, that freshness and that enthusiasm? I'm sure like every gigging like this, if you look at it like, I mean, it's becoming too mathematical when we're talking about pie charts and graphs, but
No, I like it. It makes for interesting questions.
okay, thank you. I'm glad. So, no, what I want to ask is like, energy levels can vary from gig to gig, and it sometimes external factors could also, play a role in that. Probably there's like a sound check which has not gone well. Probably, the audience isn't that receptive or anything of that sort. How do you sort of keep yourself intact in terms of like the stage persona that you are and that you sort of culminated, along the way doing so many gigs, and also how do you keep the songwriter within you intact, throughout this whole thing?
Yeah. I guess just both of those things come back to just remembering why I wrote the songs that I did. A lot of the songs that I write are deeply personal,
Right.
and it's cathartic for me to be able to write songs like that about things I've experienced or things I've witnessed. But there have also been times where people have come up to me and said that my songs resonated with them. So I think with both of those examples that you're giving, just remembering those conversations, those experiences that I've had with other people
Right.
and my own life helps me stay focused and stay fresh. I play a lot of cover gigs where I play at like a restaurant or a bar, and I'm not the primary focus. I'm just there to play other people's songs for other people's entertainment. And, in those situations, I don't expect people to really be listening. I mean, if I did, I'd be very disappointed pretty frequently.
Oh
And I
yeah,
just remember the love of the music and the reason why you're singing. Because,
sure.
some gigs are good, some gigs are bad. What can you do?
Right. It's the same here. It's the same here. Pretty much the same here. But no, I'm
I can
getting what
imagine,
you're trying to say, right? Because I feel that restaurant gigs sort of like you were talking to other artists also. What I feel is it's a really good training ground because it sort of makes you read rooms, scan rooms really well. You can when you're not the primary focus. Sometimes the pressure is also off you, so you just enjoy it, doing it for the fun of it. And also, I feel that doing covers sort of helps you internalize all these great songs and like the structures and the nitty gritties of them.
Right.
I absolutely agree. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad. So how much does that sort of has helped you sort of make you the songwriter you are? Because you're always playing and sort of channelizing. Like covers can have like I feel like covers also sort of have their own thing. Like either you do it authentically or you have like your own iteration to it. Then you're like playing around with them. I'm sure like some classics you don't touch. I mean, you do it the way they are, right? But then you have your own sort of onto them. What is like the favorite song to like cover in a gig also?
Oh man. Well, first off, you're definitely right about covers helping. I think helping you become a better musician and a better songwriter. You're forced to expose yourself to other people's material and internalize it. And yeah, some songs, if you change a Beatles song too much, people will start throwing things at you.
You get a big back, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you don't want to get too creative with songs that are like sacred, but yeah, there are some songs that I kind of do try to mix it up. I try to make them my own, and those are typically the songs that I enjoy playing the most. I really like playing a few different songs by Bruce Springsteen, it's funny because I didn't grow up listening to Bruce Springsteen, and he's from New Jersey, the state I live in, and
I see. Okay.
Yeah, but I as I've gotten older, I've really started to appreciate him. So I'd say his songs are probably my favorites to sing, and usually people know them too, so that's always nice because people get excited. Yeah.
That cultural sort of nuance to it, like I'm sure that culturally people can sort of relate to it.
I would say so.
Yeah, I mean, like the favorite song part was like the first part of the question. Yeah, I'm sure that. So yeah, I mean, that was like a segue to like the next question I have for you. Like influences, of course, like you sort of mentioned Bruce Springsteen, and I'm sure what I've also realized is that you can't have one particular influence. I'm sure that you sort of look up to somebody, but I think the artists who cover a lot have exposure to so many sort of different artists. And what I really liked about the Bruce Springsteen part of yours is that sort of a lot of artists sort of grow up to certain, like you have your John Mayers and you have your like the traditional singer-songwriters, but then I think once you sort of get into the deeper and the more micro nuances, you sort of like other artists for certain things, certain command on certain technicalities. If I could just ask you, like, who are the top 5 artists of yours who sort of influence you? Because I think one would be just to belittle anybody in particular. I'm sure like you can categorize them and you can say, this person has influenced me a lot. Who are the 5 artists that throughout like your whole career, I mean, in different phases of your life, have sort of influenced you and made you the songwriter you are?
Well, I guess number one has to be the Beatles because I was raised on the Beatles to the point where I didn't even realize how exposed I was to them because as a little kid, I knew like all their songs. I don't just mean like 5 or 10 of them. And as I got older, I was like, oh, not everybody knows that. Not everybody listens to them that much, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. So they're always up there. And then as I started to get a little older, I got really into like pop punk, alternative rock, like Taking Back Sunday. I don't know if you guys are familiar with these types of bands, Paramore.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, the people who are trained musicians who learn properly will look at me and go, oh, you like Paramore instead of the Beatles now? It's not a popular decision, but I mean, I like them both. But yeah, I really like that kind of stuff. 2 more, Regina Spektor. I really like her. Okay, She's got some pretty weird stuff. And Irish singer, Hozier. He had that song, Take Me to Church. I love him. Yeah.
Every week, like we have like only English open mic, and Perfect by Ed Sheeran is one song which is always played here.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Like you probably might have like a Damon Rice song or like something of that sort.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Jose, I really like Take Me to Church. I've not heard a lot of other stuff of his, but I'm really sort of intrigued by the kind of soundscape that he brings.
You should check it out. I only knew that one song for the longest time, and people told me to check out his material, and I said, yeah, I'll get to it. And that whole first record Take Me to Church might actually be my least favorite song on that record now. It's still very good, but the
Yeah.
rest of the record is so good. It's absurd. It's really, he's brilliant.
Do you have any recommendations of his?
Jackie and Wilson is my favorite song by him, I think. It's just got a really cool, kind of bluesy, soulful sound to it. So.
Oh, I didn't expect blues from what I heard from Jose, but yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's all over the place. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
more like my thing, man. And that's great. So,
Yes.
what I could also even notice from like you, I mean, all of these musicians that you mentioned, like the punk rock aspect of it, and Beatles and Jose, these are completely different musicians. What is the genre that you sort of enjoy yourself, playing on at the stage? What's like your go-to genre, like this on stage?
It's well, what I think I've been told I play best are the Bruce Springsteen type songs. The Killers are another one, but I secretly like wish I could be like Paramore and Taking Back Sunday, and I'm always trying to move in that direction. And my most recent stuff, the producer and I, we both love this band Jimmy Eat World. I don't know if you know them, and they're very different from what I've typically done, and I've been trying to like move in that direction. I'm like, come on, we can make this happen, because I always like that, pop punk, alternative rock type stuff.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. So, okay, that's wonderful. Are there any like songwriters that you sort of come across off lately that you really resonated with and you felt like there's like they are like opening up like newer doors to like sort of like the whole how mainstream
scenario,
sort of guarded the walls people. Is there someone off lately that you've come across that you really like the music of and you felt that they had a different soundscape compared to like what's really popping right now? Anything of that sort?
I mean, I go back to Hozier a little bit. I mean, I know he was popular and he was on the radio, but when I hear his songs, it's just so different from anything else that I listen to and anything else that you hear, that you hear on like pop music radio stations. It's hard to hear. It's at least in New York, there aren't really stations that would play something like Hozier. I don't think it's all Lady Gaga and Cardi B. And every time I listen to his songs, I feel really inspired because the way he uses his voice and the way he writes his lyrics really are unique and evocative. He's got this way of writing lines that expresses things in a really unique way that I really have come to appreciate. So I try to hopefully someday we'll be able to emulate that. We'll say.
So, it's interesting you brought that up, like, the songwriting aspect of it. What's your songwriting process like? We've spoken about like you doing gigs and, making it personal, but, sometimes emotions can also be too abstract. I mean, you're feeling them, right? But I think to sort of articulate them and, capture them into sort of like a 3-minute song or like a 4-minute song can be sometimes difficult, right? What is the process for you like to generally build a song? What is the quickest you've taken to build a song, and what is the not lengthy but sort of like gradually found its way into a song? What is
that's a great question. I typically start with a melody just because I think melodies are just hard to write. Like words at least make sense, like people can communicate with words and it means the same thing, but for the most part, the melodies are like, I don't know where they come from. Anytime I've written a song that I feel has like a catchy, effective melody, I'm like, whoa, how did that happen? It just fell into my lap. And I think it's probably that way with anything. So I usually prioritize the melody. The shortest it's ever taken to write a song, my next single called Power of My Love, I actually wrote it in like 30 minutes. It was very weird. And it was sort of, I guess, even before melody is, as you were talking about, like the emotional, component, like what you're feeling that prompts the writing of the song. And this was a song I wrote after going to a memorial for a friend of mine whose cousin had passed away. And I was really like touched by this memorial for this guy. And I came back and I wrote the song in one piece. And then other songs, as you mentioned, you write a verse and then come back like a year later and come back to it. You never know what's going to happen.
Sure. What I want to know is like to the second part that you answered. Like you said that, you write a verse. I'm sure like, I don't know how many, I know open mics are a thing out there, right? I don't know how much is it for like musicians. And I think after reaching a certain level, I'm sure that open mic is not a playing ground, right? You're just gigging all the time. It's easy for you to put stuff into like your set list and just work your way around. I mean, the whole point of open mic is to sort of workshop material and the stuff that you're doing. What I want to know is how do you sort of like, do you put out stuff just to like with alternative, like probably an alternative second verse or like probably change in lyrics and just see how the audience is reacting? Because that's a very major aspect of like how stand-up comedy works, is where you sort of just see the rhythm of it, because stand-up comedy in also in a lot of senses is like songwriting, is what Jerry Seinfeld says, is that in terms of like it has a rhythm to it,
Hmm.
how you sort of put the words together. I mean, a word elongated like two syllables more could just not result in that bigger a laugh, right?
True.
So
Yeah.
what I want to know is, do you like sort of, I mean, I'm sure that they are personal to you, and eventually the point of it is just to get it out. Would you sort of put out an unfinished song just to see and gather the response, and just if you are in two minds about something, or you just want it to be a finished product and then put it out and sort of like go on the road with it? What is it like for you?
Yeah, that's actually very interesting. I guess I have done that without thinking about it. Sometimes if I'm at a cover gig where I'm supposed to play other people's songs, don't
Yeah.
tell anyone I told you this. Sometimes I'll play an original song I haven't released yet,
Yeah.
just because no one can hear it anywhere else. See if anyone turns around and goes, "What was that? That's the best thing I've ever heard." Hasn't happened yet, but yeah, no. Sometimes I do play like.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and there are times I play like different versions of a song. I recently just premiered a video that I did and actually in Brooklyn of all places, and I played two of the songs that I had released previously, but I played them very differently. Like "Happy" actually is one of them, where it has kind of like a beat and stuff. I played it very
yeah.
slow and quiet, and just to see what people think and whatnot. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you sort of like vary the tempo of the song as well. That's interesting.
Yeah, and like actually Bruce Springsteen does that a lot, and I actually hate when Bruce Springsteen does this because he'll play a song so differently that it's almost unrecognizable. But
Right.
some people love it, and I will say I admire that he does that because I think it's a
Yeah.
neat thing to reinvent a song. But I kind of get used to the way it sounds, and I'm like, oh, it's this. That's not how it's supposed to go.
No, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. That
but that's
happens
it.
with me
Yeah,
when you sort of like change the octave of the song and like you play it in some other, like if you're hearing it on a radio or if you're hearing it on TV and you've heard that song so many times in a particular octave and the octave is changed and probably the tempo
yeah,
for copyright reasons, you're like, no man, this is not that song. I can totally,
exactly. Doesn't feel
right.
like the same thing.
It doesn't feel like, because you're so programmed to listening it to that way. So
Exactly.
talking about like gigging, putting your own music out there. I'm sure you've done like lineup shows. What is
Mhm.
your relationship with lineup shows? How do you sort of, because I mean, also coming back and equating it with comedy, I feel like sometimes lineup shows can you have to sort of maintain the energy of the room, right? Like the person who's like sort of precedented you and the person who's going to like sort of follow you. You like ensuring that your set list is sort of structured this way where it's like keeping the energy of the room
Mm.
intact. How do you sort of what so I mean, lineup shows are a really interesting playground to me, because I feel sometimes genres can vary, because we happen to curate open mics here in Pune, and most of the shows are either curated open mics or something of that sort. And there are different sort of musicians coming. Somebody's like a three-piece band, or you like have somebody who's like doing like electric guitar stuff. There's somebody who's just doing singer-songwriter stuff. There's somebody who's going into like different subgenres. How do you sort of keep your set intact? And I'm sure that that also sort of trains you how to change gears and all those things. What is your relationship with lineup shows in a nutshell? If you could tell us that.
Yeah, it can be tricky. I think lineup shows can be really great though. I found just from like a logistical standpoint, if you present, for example, if you present an entire lineup of acts to a venue that is kind of prestigious, they're sometimes more receptive to that because you're doing all the work for them, giving them, a whole night of entertainment. So from that perspective, I love it. I've got a really good gig coming up at the end of the year, hopefully, if COVID allows it.
Right,
That I'm not sure if I would have been able to get if I just was going to them just as myself without a whole event
right,
planned. But
right,
yeah,
right,
it can be tough. I do think that I like to think that there's room for flexibility though, because you don't want to put like a loud rock band right before an acoustic act because that'll be like a really dramatic drop off. But
right.
I think like different styles can kind of coexist if it's done tastefully. I tend to play and write sad, slow songs. So I have to be very cognizant of like throwing in a couple fast, happy ones just to mix it up. But yeah, it can be a really great thing, I think. Yeah.
Right, right. I think it sort of tests you, and you sort of like, I think the adaptive nature of like performing artist sort of just comes to play. That's great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Uh,
I-
talking about like
I think just wanted to add up here. So also it's also like if you are going to make a set list, you also need to make sure that you don't play the high energy or the exhausting songs in the very start, right? I mean,
Oh yeah.
uh,
I've done
yeah,
because
that.
yeah,
Tired
so
by song number 2 or 3.
right,
I'm done. I'm leaving. Get me off the stage.
so this is something I realized from my first or second gig that you can't do that. You can't do that. I mean, while you're gigging, you have to make sure that you have all the energy stored up for the
Yeah.
very end, and then play the songs which will, make much more impression.
Absolutely. Even from an energy point, and even I feel like, I mean, just I happen to like do very brief acting workshops for 2 3 months, and acting workshops sort of involve like improvisation. So like there are two
Mhm.
actors, they have to sort of improvise a scene and just do something. What we were
Mhm.
taught in the acting by our acting coach was also that our acting instructor was that you should never get the highest emotion in the beginning, because then there's nothing to look forward to in the scene, right? I feel that
Yeah.
even from a structured point of view, of course, like energy is the most important. Like that's your fuel for lasting on stage and all of those things. But I feel that if you just sort of like get a heightened emotion towards the beginning, then they expect that from you, and you have to only escalate on that or sort of maintain that, which can be very difficult because energy is like a
Correct.
weighted resource, right? So,
Yeah.
right. I mean, also what I want to know is, I know like gigging. We're talking about like the performer aspects of it, and like we already spoke about the fact like you've done restaurant gigs, where you're not like the main sort of center of attraction, right? Which is like sort of like the whole template of the gigs that happen at restaurants. How do you sort of deal with hostile crowds? Because I'm sure like people not paying attention is one thing. How do you sort of? I'm sure that you built a thick skin, doing so many gigs. How do you sort of keep yourself intact in those aspects, and how do you sort of deal with people if they're sort of being a little disrespectful or a little insensitive? You probably might play one song and they're like, why don't you play this? Probably drunk or something of that sort, which happens a lot here. How do you sort of keep yourself intact and react to that situation?
Yeah, like you said, I think you develop a bit of a thick skin over time. I remember one gig I did early on, and this guy was being really obnoxious. He was
Oh,
actually like yelling things at me. So my brilliant idea was to sing as loudly as I could to try to like
okay.
drown him out, which is actually a terrible idea because I ended up like really straining my voice. But
Yeah,
yeah, now I think I just kind of come back to, like I said in the beginning, come back to remembering why I'm doing this. You're gonna have good gigs, you're gonna have bad gigs. I just feel fortunate to have a gig
yeah,
in general. So
right.
yeah, just sort of keep a focus on the big picture. I guess that helps me keep
No,
my spirit intact, I guess.
that's a healthy way of approaching it. Absolutely. And so, I mean, that's like, I mean, that's a really sort of optimistic way of looking at it. But I'm sure that sometimes some gigs just sort of get to you. I mean, even
Oh
just
yeah,
just thinking how
discouraging in the moment for sure. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
at the
Like
time. Yeah.
yeah, how do you sort of what's like your coping mechanism with dealing with stuff where you're like probably this could have been a little better, and it could be from all sides. Sometimes it could just be all of that together, where it's like the sound is also not going your way, the audience is not going your way, probably the
Yes.
manager at the place is not going your way, or sometimes it's just
Yeah.
good things. How do you sort of keep yourself intact? I'm sure you're saying that you look at the bigger picture. That so sometimes in the heat of the moment you can't really. How do you like? Do you give
Yeah.
it time, or do you do another gig? And I think sometimes the other gig just is like a healing process. What is it like for you?
I think I think the most important thing there is remembering other gigs. Remembering the fact that you felt this way before and it got better. Like that's a big thing. I sometimes I'll tell like my father, I'll be like, that was the worst gig I ever had in my life, and he'll be like, didn't you say that like 2 weeks ago? I'm like, oh yeah, and then the next gig it was fine. So I guess this is gonna happen. This is just how it goes for everybody every once in a
Right.
while. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that's what I try to do. I just remember the feeling that I don't like in the moment. I felt that
Yeah.
before, and then the next day it was fine.
That's great. That's
So,
great.
Yeah.
So I
yeah,
mean, what I also, Parth, were you saying something? Please
no, no,
continue.
I was about to ask a follow-up question if you have
No, no,
anything
please.
else. So, what I wanted to, since we are talking about gigs, so, and when I saw your videos, when I saw listened to your songs, I understood that you have written very different songs, different in the aspect, I mean, different energies. Again, not like completely different, but different kind of songs which can be played at different venues, basically. And you've done so far gigs as well. You've done different other venues as well. So our question is, what do you enjoy the most? Are those the intimate gigs like so far, or playing to a crowd at a restaurant, or not really restaurant, but a crowd where the energy levels are very very up? And is it what's the better gig for you?
Yeah, I'm. That's a great question. I'm just smiling because it comes back to the wanting to be in Paramore type deal. Like I always want to be in the rock band. So when I've played, like I played this place in New York City called Arlene's Grocery, and it's like a sort of like traditional rock club. It's not huge, but like rock bands play there. It's hard to play there
Right.
solo acoustic.
Mm.
Um, So I played there with a full band, and that was the best. So that's my answer in short. I really like the rock band, loud crowd, everyone's excited, but there are also positive aspects of an intimate performance. Like I mentioned, that video premiere I just did a couple days ago. It was just myself in a tea room, so I was surrounded by like glass everywhere. I was convinced I was going to break something. I'm flailing my arms, and I'm tall. You maybe can't see, but I'm 6'3", so I was like very worried that I was going to break something. But sometimes it's nice to keep it real quiet and subdued too. But if I had to pick, I think the rock and roll band type deal.
I mean,
yeah.
If in a rock show, I feel that like with like metal gigs, like hip hop gigs and rock gigs, like when it just gets really hardcore, you are feeling of the energy of the audience, right? I mean, it's like a mutual give and take. I mean, sometimes you're the primary source of the energy, like you spoke about, like having like a energy sort of escape throughout like the whole performance. But I feel like when you really get into the zone, that can't be paralleled with like any. I think that's a different vibe. So I'm sure that's why you resonate with that.
Yeah.
Also interesting you mentioned doing gigs with bands, because that brings me to our next question. I feel that having bands is a really important aspect of it, because music in general, when you're like sort of producing a song, unless like you're doing it yourself, it's a collaborative process, right? But it also differs for like singer-songwriters to keep it to themselves, and generally it's only in the studio where it gets collaborative and all those things. How do you change your gears, and how do you change yourself as a performer when you're performing with a band? Is it like I'm sure the pressure is lesser on you because you're not the only performing entity, but how do you sort of adjust to like the whole vibe of the responsibilities being divided and it being like a collaborative process? How do you go about that on stage? What is your relationship with that?
To be honest, it's just a feel thing. I was real. I'll put it this way: I was really nervous about playing with the band when I started doing it, because for my whole life I've been playing, like you said, solo acoustic, singer-songwriter, and then I was like, oh man, other people are like relying on me to not mess this up, and I'm trying to like mesh with everyone, and then I guess for whatever reason, like I just realized I can't think about that. I just have to do it. And then as soon as I stopped thinking about it, everything was fine, So I think you just have to like literally just feel the music and just don't think about anything at all.
So, what I also find interesting about like playing with a band is like sometimes it's just like the gig just goes on autopilot, right? Like you don't know what's happening. Like there's like this give and take which is happening. Probably there's like something happening on the drums, or there's some like instrumental piece or like some solo which is like just taking place, and you're just like vibing to that, you're jamming to that, and there's like the chemistry which can't like you can't like curate those things, they just happen.
Right.
So
organic.
That's pretty organic, right? And that's interesting. So that was like one aspect of like the collaborative thing of like music. You've also done a bunch of collabs, and we happen to check like the stuff that you've done, like features, and what is that process like? What do you look for like in an ideal collaborator? Does it have to be matching energy? Does it have to be the same genre of music, or could just be contrasting? But that also sometimes I feel could really bring a really interesting flavor to the whole song and the piece that you're working on. What is it
precisely
like?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I think at the end of the day, as you've alluded to a couple times, different influences do create like a different vibe. That's sometimes even more. It's even better than when you have two people who are coming from the same perspective. So my most recent collaboration with my buddy Phil Robinson, he plays the harmonica on that song "Happy," and he's a bit more folk oriented. There's some overlap. We're not in totally different worlds musically, but I lean toward rock and he leans toward like folk stuff for the most part. And it worked well together. His orientation worked well with the song and brought it in a different direction than it probably would have gone otherwise.
Right. So like speaking about like collabs, is there somebody like your ideal collab, like on your bucket list, somebody that you genuinely want to collaborate with within like the mainstream?
I mean, Paul McCartney would be pretty cool. What's that?
You said Cardi B, or like whom are you talking about?
Oh no, I said Paul McCartney. Cardi B would be very weird. That would definitely be two different worlds.
I would want to see that power of yours, but
I might sell more records if I went with Cardi B though.
I was like, you're talking to the Beatles, but then how did Cardi B come into this? I was like, oh, that's Paul McCartney.
Right.
I heard it right the first time when you said McCartney, and then Bharat put the doubt in my mind. It
Oh
was
yeah.
fun. I was like,
What about both? Can we have both of them collaborate with me? Rory
Oh, sure.
featuring Cardi B and Paul McCartney?
Oh my.
That
That would be interesting. I mean, yeah. That I mean,
would be
now
pretty
that
wild.
you just said it, I really want that collab. I mean, there's that dialogue from the Batman, right? We don't need it, but we deserve it. I don't know what that
Yeah.
is.
Absolutely. Yes, that is the
And
collaboration we all deserve.
we all deserve. That would be very interesting. But I mean, also speaking from like the other genres, I'm sure that other genres also sort of influence. I mean, I feel like sometimes when you're just listening to the same kind of stuff that you're doing, it can also be derivative, right? I think you need like something like I'm sure like you might be vibing to hip hop also a little bit, and you might
Yeah.
be.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I
Uh,
like Kanye West. His music, not necessarily him, but there are definitely some Kanye songs that I'm like, that's smart. That's really, that's
right.
on point.
hmm.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
and then he talks. His personal life comes to the forefront, and I go, oh no.
Man, I was just watching an interview of his with this like this really famous. I mean, there's that famous breakdown of his on radio. Like, you don't have the answers. You don't have the answers. I mean, I was just
uh,
watching the interview of his. He was talking about like his clothing line, and he was talking about how he's educated himself and empowered himself. I feel Kanye West is a really sort of. I think the impact of Kanye. I mean, it's already very evident, but I think 20 years down the line, people will really be able to decipher what Kanye actually is, because he himself is really sort of vague about what he is, but he's
yeah.
really I mean, I know a lot of people who personally regard him as a genius, and I feel he definitely is. But I think sometimes,
Yeah.
I mean, it's about how you look at where he's coming from. I mean,
Mhm.
how empathetic you are towards like what he's trying to say. But I think he's a
Sure,
really
sure.
interesting artist. It's good that you mentioned
Yeah.
Kanye. Are there any sort of other hip hop artists that you really like resonate with?
I'm trying to think. I have mixed feelings about Eminem, but
Yeah.
lyrically, you can't argue with the cleverness. His
Mhm.
Oh,
lines are really well constructed, and I
True.
want to hate it, but I'm like, man, like objectively, like the way he's manipulating the words is
for
brilliant.
sure.
So, yeah, I'm not super into hip hop, but I'm receptive to anything, and there are like I said, a few artists. There's a couple songs by Nicki Minaj that I like, but
Right.
anyone who's really into hip hop is probably like, this guy knows nothing, because that's those are
But
like the three most popular artists, or among the three most.
oh no no. I mean, what I also feel is that sometimes people just hate on people for liking mainstream, whereas there's nothing wrong in just liking mainstream itself,
Sure,
because it's
yeah,
popular for a reason, right? So I mean, yeah, and I yeah that sort of like I don't know, art snobbery happens like once you like deep into that stuff, which I really generally don't try to get into. I can sort of understand. I would recommend you listening to Russ. I don't know, you surely heard about him, but Russ, his name is Russ. He's a independent rapper from your country.
okay,
Russ is basically he's not signed to any labels, and I think at the age of he's just 28 now, and he's put out like 15
wow,
albums or something, and
wow,
that man is making a fortune like just like from his publishing rights and all those things, and
wow,
there's a lot of flack that he gets from the community, but I think a lot of it is curated because he's against labels, and
mm,
he's doing really well. So I've heard his discography of lately. I was trying to study him, and he's a really inspirational entity because he mix masters, produces, writes his own songs,
Mhm.
and I think he's been producing since like 2003 or something. And
wow,
I
and
mean
he's
he
so
has no
young.
yeah,
Wow,
he's just 28, man. He's just 28, and
huh,
he collaborated with like Rick Ross and like a lot of known
huh,
entities. So
wow,
you must have heard a lot of songs of his, like What They Want, and I mean he's really good. He's very popular.
yeah,
He's pretty good. So you should check him out because I feel like he sort of like represents an indie spirit, even though like hip hop like really has like a DIY vibe to it, like the ciphers and
yeah,
styling and just like writing stuff which is really personal to you, very biographical, which is also like the essence of like singer-songwriter music.
yeah.
Okay,
I love it.
deviating from that, I'm sure that hip hop is something that you are into, but not super into. Is there any other sort of genre that really fascinates you? Just listen to. I don't know whether you have any inhibitions of getting into it, but like something that really fascinates you as a musician. So you're like, this is good. I mean, I like the vibe of it. Is there something of that sort?
I like everything. I listen to some metal.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I like Tool. I like Avenged Sevenfold. Very different from each other, but yeah, I listen to pretty much anything basically.
Right.
It all helps make me. I mean, potentially makes me a better songwriter, and I just feel like we can all benefit from having eclectic tastes in music.
Yeah. How much is like your innocence of consumption of music gone? Because I feel that once you sort of like get into the technicalities of it, you're always sort of like analyzing stuff from like the perimeters or like the lens of like a songwriter structure
Yeah.
and like are there some songs that you can genuinely enjoy without like all those all that baggage, or you still like you're too deep into the process that you can't look at it? I'm sure that you enjoy. I mean, what I feel for artists is that you enjoy stuff for like the levels of you enjoying stuff for like sort of deepens because you are like, I like how he did that. I like how he sort of went into that and did that so beautifully.
Right.
Some
Yeah.
stuff that you sort of.
Both.
I'm sorry, yeah, not cutting you. Yeah.
Oh
So
no, I was just gonna say both things exist where I hear a song and I like it and I just don't think about it. And then when I think about it more, I'm like, oh, it probably works because this person did this thing. Like the other day, I was listening to this song by a band called Churches. I think they're from Scotland. And there was like a vocal melody in the chorus. And I was like, oh, it's like a variation on a theme. And I think it works because it's building up and the chord progression is, going up and then I've, got kind of like, scientific or whatever about it, analytical, but I also just listen to it and I'm like, oh, that's pretty. I like it. So luckily I hope it always stays that way. I have those two lenses,
yeah, I think both of them are important, right? Because
I think so. Yeah.
I think they are equally important to like you objectively looking at the stuff you're making as well. Because I mean, technically everything would just be flawless, but like if you're just not enjoying it, what's the point?
Right.
Of it?
Exactly.
But does that happen to your own songs as well? I mean, do you like sometimes overdo it for your songs? Because I do that often. I do that
Really?
often. And then I have to keep it aside and listen to something else.
I try not to place any judgments on anything. I think there was a point in my life where I thought all my last 5 songs, they're all the same like chord progression or whatever. And then I was like, but you know what? Like some people like it, and I didn't feel like throwing them out. I thought they were like good enough to stick with. So I was like, I'm not even going to worry about the complexities of it all. And I'm not like really professionally trained or anything like that. Anyway, I taught myself to play guitar, actually play upside down and backwards. So, it probably helps me that I'm not super, analytical. All the analysis or whatever I do to think about it critically is just sort of like gut stuff, experiential stuff, not like textbook stuff. So yeah, I hear something, I go, that's simple, that's repetitive, whatever, I like it, I'm just going to go with it, So
that's very interesting.
Interesting.
That's a very modest answer. Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you talked about that you learned the guitar by yourself, right? And so when I was trying to watch your videos just to see, I mean, just to pull out things out of all the videos and for this podcast, what I noticed was that I mean, it doesn't show up on the videos, right? If you are not very careful, you won't really understand that the guitar is upside down.
Oh yeah.
So in all your videos, I was noticing that the pick press is on the upside, and right before that, I just saw it as there is a person who is left-handed. That's it.
Right.
That's the only thing that I had in my mind, and all of a sudden in one video, I think it focused on your guitar, and then I saw it. It's something is weird there. Then I went.
Yeah.
And then I went over to your website as well. By the way, great work, whoever has worked on that.
Thank you.
In the about section, I read that you actually started learning the guitar by yourself, and you picked it up upside down and started learning that. But I mean, it's totally against the if I may laws of guitar. So how did that happen? I mean, that's something interesting that I think that you do.
I learned really young, like really like before kindergarten, I think. And, I'm sure it wasn't very good, but I picked it up before I knew what the hell was going on, basically. And then it became a habit. Even now when I look at like chord diagrams or tabs, things don't look upside down to me. I don't know. Everyone always says, how do you read these things when it's upside down? I said, it's upside down? It doesn't look upside down. And then when I watch other people play properly, obviously I can see that the strings are flipped, but it flips in my mind too. It's strange, but I just picked it up because I didn't know what I was doing, I guess is the answer.
But that's really interesting and goes on to show that I mean, you can't really box things when you're saying, I mean, especially for art, for any art, you can't really box that this is the method that will always work. This is only the thing that is going to work. I mean, that's something that comes out of it, I think.
Yeah, that's a really nice way of looking at it. I usually think, oh, it's wrong. This sucks, but I can't fix it. But no, what I will say is I recently was trying to learn how to play a proper lefty guitar, so a guitar that has the strings in the correct order again. And I was able to do it, but it was very uncomfortable, and I wasn't quite as natural. If I tried to play a righty guitar like a normal person, it definitely wouldn't work. But I noticed there are some songs that I can't play with the strings in the proper order because the parts that I've written are only like my fingers literally like the human wrist can't go that way. So to that point, I guess I've created something, not to be like obnoxious, but I've created something that's hard to like duplicate. So in that respect, I guess it's original. I'm a pioneer. I feel like it sounds ridiculous, but no, at the end of the day, like, I mean, people can't play it. I can play it and they can't. So,
For sure. Does it like give you like an edge to like gigging and all? You're like, hey man, you can't do this. Let me just handle it.
well, the problem is, I'm sure there's a flip side of that too, and there are things that I'm supposed to be able to play that I can't. But I haven't run into that too much, thankfully. But I'm also not trying to play like Jimi Hendrix or anything, so it doesn't really.
Oh, absolutely, man. I mean,
matter.
there's always stuff that you can't do, right? But I mean,
right.
It's either. I mean, I feel that there's always like a middle ground to it where you're like, there's stuff I want to do and there's stuff I can't do at all. And
yeah.
You accept that there's certain things you can't do, you'll work your way around. If you do, that's great. If you don't, it's all right.
Exactly.
That's great. I mean, speaking about like instruments in general, is there any instrument that really fascinates and you want to get towards? I'm sure like the guitar is like the predominant part of like you composing. It's almost like a body organ to you, right? Like where you can't sort of like go without it when it comes to like, songs and all those things.
It's very natural.
Is there any other instrument that I'm sure for a lot of people it's like the synth or the piano and all those things.
I love piano.
You love the piano, right?
It's the piano, yeah. I can play it a little bit. I've written some songs on piano, but to just be able to play piano like really perfectly would be like amazing. Like I like it even more than the guitar, to be honest. But I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, Akshit has started doing that actually because Akshit, I've done like 50, 60 gigs with him, like in open mics and feature shows and all those things. And he used to do a lot of like stuff on like guitar out here, but then he sort of like deviated towards. I mean, not even deviated, sort of like gradually moved towards the piano, and a lot of the songs are piano based now. I find that really interesting because it sort of changes the texture and like the whole feel of the song when you're even composing it. But because I feel that on the piano you can, I mean, I'm not saying that it limits your songwriting. I feel that you sort of enter a new territory, right? And I'm sure like the songs on the piano are much softer in terms of like texture and like that's interesting.
Absolutely, yeah.
Let's talk about like the Songwriter Showcase, which is something I really found interesting. How did that come to be?
I just I missed my friends. I missed my friends, and I had met a lot of great musicians in this area. One of the reasons I didn't do music for a long time, by the way, I just want to say this, is because I thought it was too hard and it was too scary and nobody would help me and all this stuff. But as I started to make a push a couple of years ago is when I really started playing a lot. I met all these great people, and people helped me and encouraged me, and I fed off of what they were doing and vice versa. So as a result, my favorite aspect, or one of my favorite aspects of music, is that community. So once the pandemic started and things kind of shut down, I said, well, maybe we can do something on Instagram, and I can show the few people that follow me, my friends, and get people to sort of hear all the great music that I get to hear. And then, I mean, we just finished episode 51. Obviously, actually, it was a guest as well. Fantastic. I love that guy. And it just kept going. Works for me.
Oh, absolutely it does. And it's not only working for you. I mean, the fact that you're looking at it as a community, because a lot of artists can be sort of individualistic and, I mean, self-centered would be the wrong term, just self-focused. And you always find a mix of like artists who are like very community oriented, and then there are artists who just in their own lane and looking at stuff, which is suiting to them. I'm sure, and then it's great to see. Sorry, am I cutting you in any way?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I get it, but I think you lose a lot when you're like that. There's a lot of beautiful things you miss out on at that point. Yeah.
For sure. Absolutely. Because there's so much to learn, and I feel that you can't grow alone. I mean, the fact that, it's not even about worrying about your own growth. I feel that there's something more magical about doing it with people and like lifting up the team together and
Absolutely. I wouldn't have gotten to where I was without other people's help too. So I mean, in some ways, it helps me to help other people, but it also, I just want to give back, because where would I be if nobody helped me? So.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That gratitude and that groundedness is really important. That's great. How did the Songwriter Showcase sort of change your approach towards music in particular?
How did it? What you said?
How did the Songwriter Showcase change your approach towards music in particular?
Oh, I think it just really further emphasized what I already knew, which was the importance of community. But I started having people on from other regions. Like now, there's been like a lot of people on from Nashville, and
Right.
I think Nashville is one of the big ones. And it was like kind of unintentional. I just people that were on the showcase started telling me about other people that might be good for the showcase, and a lot of them are in Nashville because it's a great city for music. So I guess what I will say is it helped me understand how small the world is. I mean,
Oh
India,
yeah.
you know.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of stuff
So
like you said
yeah,
about like gigs in general. I feel it's universal. I mean, even if it's
yeah.
happening on Mars, it's going to be the same, right? So
Oh
obviously,
yeah.
certain things can't be changed, and I think that's what sort of ties in. I feel music is such a beautiful language because if you like a song, if you like the melody of it, if you like the instrumentation of it, doesn't matter what language it is in. A lot of the stuff I'm
Absolutely.
sure that I mean, Punjabi music is like a very Punjabi music is like Punjabi is a language, one of the many languages in India, a very
Right.
dominant and historically rich language. A lot of party songs are actually Punjabi, but a
Mhm.
lot of Indians might even not know the exact meaning of the wording, but they still vibe to it because it's
Yeah.
like beat. So I
Yeah. It
feel
transcends that. Absolutely.
sure, for sure,
Yeah.
sure. Is
So
there any artist in particular that you had in the Songwriter Showcase? Like you mentioned, people from Nashville and connecting with different parts. Is there somebody in
If I don't
particular?
say act shit, then what am I doing?
For
I
sure.
have to say it. What's that?
Akshat, oh yeah, man. Akshat is wonderful.
I
Anybody
love this
apart
stuff.
from anybody apart from Akshat?
Um, I don't know. I don't really want to single anybody out, but I mean, they're just like I feel like I will say every week I feel like everybody brings something totally different to the table, and they make me look like a genius because what we were talking about before, the transition from
Yeah,
one artist to the next, people will
yeah.
say to me, wow, that was so neat how they were so different but they fit together perfectly. I'm like, I had nothing to do with that. Like, that's just like, I don't know how that happened,
But I
but
take
yeah, a
all
lot
the
of
credit. Okay.
times.
But I take all the credit. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's fine.
I'll take credit.
I'll not be humble about that. But yeah, no. So,
Right.
no, that's great. That's great. What that sort of brings me back towards is like the gigging aspect of it, because now you go back to gigs with all this perspective of doing stuff with people that you probably wouldn't encounter within like the gigging circuit. How do you sort of go back to the gigging scene? I'm sure like you being in the lockdown, you've done the Songwriter Showcase. I'm sure the gigs that have happened in whatever capacity that they've happened.
Yeah,
I'm
there
sure
were a few, yeah.
yeah. How has that like sort of changed the proportion of like how much you work on your music in terms of like the studio time you're giving it or the time that you're spending to like consume music, explore new genres? How do you go back with all this new collected data in terms of like perspective and everything in general, gratitude? How do you go back to the gig scene now? I'm sure you're a changed person. Everybody is. How do you go back?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to it with a fresh perspective for sure, and with more information and more relationships, and
Sure.
yeah, I mean, it'll be a little bit of an adjustment, I'm sure. I know a lot of people joke about, when they see each other in the same room, how are they going to know how to act? They're going to be awkward, and all of
Yeah.
that. But I'm sure it'll be a little weird in the beginning. But because of the showcase,
Yeah.
especially, I've had the opportunity to stay in contact with a lot of people, so. I think it'll be great. It'll definitely be fun to meet some of these people who I've only met online and things like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure. Uh, how do you? I mean, that also sort of like goes to like the other part of the question. I'm sure that you started music for a different reason, right? Everybody has reasons. For some people, it's gratification. For some people, it's just putting themselves out there. Some people, it's just being passionate about music in general. All those things. For some people, it's just earning a livelihood, enjoying what they do. I'm sure it could be all for you. It could be three of the four reasons, or four of the
Right.
reasons, or
Yeah.
one of the reasons, right? I mean, you start with certain aspirations and certain, inhibitions. How is it sort of like changed and transcended throughout, and what is the larger purpose with music?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's changed in that as I've realized the beauty
Yeah,
of community even more, I've become more community focused. So my
right.
goals involve, helping other people and incorporating other people's art into what I do even more.
Sure.
For example, I've done like a lot of photo shoots recently with some really talented photographers, and I've
Right.
done a couple music videos with folks, and these are things I never would have thought about in a million years. I thought,
Okay.
about, oh, okay, I need to know guitarists and bassists and drummers, and but now I'm like, oh, cool, I get to bring somebody's visual art into the picture, and things like
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
the goal is still the same, to hopefully reach as many people as I can, but the journey has changed a little bit as I've gotten more familiar with the specific parts of the process.
Sure. I feel the pandemic has either made people restless or really patient. I mean, there's no middle ground to it. I feel people
Yeah,
find. I mean, I feel it's either you're just eager to go back to the scene and just
yeah.
things in the flow that you were doing, which is a little difficult for the next year or two. I feel for sure. But
Yeah.
have you become more patient as a person in general after the pandemic? And you're like,
I've become a much worse person. No,
okay,
I guess. Well, a few of the big gigs that I had were canceled because of COVID or postponed. So from that
yeah,
perspective, I guess I've become more patient. But
yeah,
on the other hand, so many things are in the works now. All these people that I've met are saying, let's play together next time you're in wherever, or, even like just to come see a show. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of things I want to do that I can't wait to do, put it that way. So yes and no. I'm patient, but I'm also eager for things to get back to normal.
great.
Right.
That's great.
So while we are talking about the whole pandemic that has happened and gigs being postponed, cancelled, there is one more aspect that all of us have seen about the venues that many of the venues have to either even close down. I mean, that has happened all across India as well. So many venues actually couldn't survive the pandemic. They had to either, and so many very very music friendly venues as well, artist friendly venues as well. uh, so what I'm getting onto is there was this situation that you all dealt with, where you did a online streaming gig to save one of one of the
The bitter
one of
end. Yeah.
yeah, and it's one of the probably the oldest venue that's there in New York.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of, I think it's what, 60 years old or something.
Yeah. Bob Dylan, James Taylor, Peter, Paul, and Mary have all played there back in the 60s. So yeah, I guess something to that effect. Yeah. It's been there forever. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, how did that happen? I mean, how did you guys came together onto that and like literally saved it?
Yeah, well, we were able to play a part, which is fantastic. I got connected to that through my buddy Phil Robinson, the guy who played harmonica on Happy. Actually, he's a great singer songwriter in his own right, but he's a masterful community organizer, I guess you'd say, or something like that effect. He puts together events. He knows everyone, and he's always introducing people and making things happen. So he. For one reason or another, he was able to make that event happen. There were people, some of the performers that were on that bill, I think it was like 16 or something, 15, between 15 and 20 performers. Some of them were friends of mine and some of them were friends of him and other people that we become familiar with. So he incorporated them, and then I think we're able to approach the venue and ask them if they would be willing to, embrace this and endorse it and support it and whatnot. Knowing that it would be mutually beneficial. Yeah. So short answer is, a friend of mine who was from the New York scene was passionate about it. Wanted to get going, and we were able to do it. It was a really special experience, and we can't wait to play there. It's a great place to play. It's sort of a small room, but it just feels like when you're there, you feel like you're in the right place. A lot of historical things. Lady Gaga had played there as well.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So yeah, it's a cool spot.
That's a beautiful story actually. I feel that yeah, I mean it just comes back to the fact that you have to give back to the community, and I feel sometimes people just shy away, think that is this exactly something I need to give back to. So the fact that you really gave back to, because I feel the ecosystem itself, there's these components, core components of the ecosystem, that it's like the people, the technicians, and in some cases the audience members, certain traditions in terms of like how gigs go about, certain formats, these things can't be messed with. I think these things need to be protected. I mean, of course, evolution is important, and you're working your way up and trying to change things. But I think some things, like you said, like when you were talking about, you said that you would probably not do a Beatles song any differently, or you probably wouldn't touch the classics. I feel yeah, just giving back to the community when it's required the most, really is the test, or is a testament to what the core values of any artist is. So the fact that you guys did that and for the right reasons is a wonderful thing.
Thank you, man. It was an honor to be a part of, and we're really glad they were successful because they're starting to book shows again. With different protocol and whatnot.
Okay.
But yeah, with very careful protocol, they're starting to reopen. So I mean, they made it.
That's great, and that's great.
Yeah.
How about you guys for doing that? I mean, genuinely.
Thank you, man.
I mean, this has been wonderful, man, talking to you. I mean, I think we're almost in an hour into the podcast, but
Oh,
it's not even felt like. I mean, it's been so smooth talking to you. Parth, we're going to
Same.
ask you the last question that we have, which is like a
yeah.
corporate question that we ask,
All right.
and you're going to know why. So he
Uh-oh.
belongs to like the corporate sector. So I mean, like it's a good contrast of being an artist and from the corporate sector. So, Parth bhai, please go about it.
So it's basically about what can we as an audience expect from you in the coming days. We started with this question and we used to ask, how do you see yourself in 5 years? But
Yeah,
Sure,
I'm just
sure.
trying to change it to something like
I got you.
few months or
yeah.
near future. What do you expect? What should we expect from you?
Well, more episodes of the Songwriter Showcase. Hopefully, we're booked out for a little bit, so that's definitely going to be happening. And then for myself, I'm working toward releasing my third EP. I actually just released my second single from that EP, and this is, in my opinion, my finest work. I don't know. This is the thing I'm most proud of that I've ever done. So I'm really excited about it. It's really personal to me, and that's going to be coming out in the summer.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Anything apart from that, any collabs or something that we should be expecting?
So yeah, potentially. I'm thinking about these songs are in a specific form, but
Yeah.
I'm thinking about doing alternate versions because a cousin of mine who I actually performed with at the bitter end on one of these songs, the place we were just talking about, I was thinking about maybe bringing her in, and nobody else knows this, so this is top secret information, but it's public now. But yeah, we may do like an alternate version of one of these songs, see if we can bring her in. She's got a tremendous voice. Her name is Brooke Morber, and yeah, I actually have a band on the back burner as well as sort of on hold because of COVID. It's made it a little bit more difficult. But we have songs. The drummer and I and a bassist are working together to put out some material for that as well. We don't have a name yet, but we've been working together for a while. So that is another thing that from a collaboration standpoint that's on the horizon.
Great. That's great. And
Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that there's all that work. Because I feel like the pandemic is, however optimistic you are, it's sort of like, rattled people in a way where, you can't even like explain. I mean, it has rattled people in different ways. But the fact that, you're planning far ahead and, you're not stopping. In fact, you're trying to build a community, have all these,
Yeah.
amazing records in the work and, just working towards like newer songs, EPs, collabs, building a band of your own and, doing all of this amazing stuff with your head held high. It's such a good example for anybody who's trying to pursue stuff where you should just not give up and just keep going because I feel what your relationship with your inner voices is reflects in your songwriting, reflects in how the decisions you make for your career eventually. So the fact that there's that clarity, it's really inspiring. So thank you so much, Rory. It's
Thank
been
you,
an
man.
absolute pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and we're hoping to see some amazing work, just like your previous work. And I mean, you just tearing the roof with all the stuff that you're doing. And thank you so much for taking out the time, guys. Please go and follow Rory. Rory, if you could just tell your Instagram ID to everybody watching till this point.
You said to say my Instagram?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just at Rory Lasnow, RORYDLA Snow, SNOW.
Oh, absolutely. And also go and follow the Songwriter Showcase. They're doing some incredible work there. They've completed like 50 episodes, which is like a huge milestone. Because I feel to continue and go forward with that, I feel I'm sure that the Songwriter Showcase has become its own thing now. It's become its own entity. Where
Yeah, well, it has. Yeah, it actually that has its own Instagram as well, which is just at the Songwriter Showcase. But yeah, it really has become its own thing.
Oh yeah, we checked the
great.
page. It's amazing. So please go and follow both the pages and go and check Rory's music out on YouTube, Spotify, and all audio streaming platforms. That's it from me, Bharat, and my co-host Parth. Please go and follow Sounds Home on Instagram. It's soundshome.pod. We also put out a podcast every Friday on YouTube and subsequently on Spotify and other streaming platforms. Thank you so much for joining us. Special thanks to Akshat for this episode as well, connecting us.
Yes.
Human being and
the
person that Rory is. And thank you so much to everybody who's made it to this point of the podcast. And we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers, guys. Take care. Bye.
Thank you so much, guys.
Pleasure's all ours. Thank you so much, Rory. Thank you. See you around.
Thank you, man.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.